All right. Welcome to the Security Weekly News wrap-up for the week of 7 June. I'm on the set of Security Weekly here. It's kind of sticky because they had a show last night, but, you know, it's okay. That's why they have Purell. Show news: Facebook and the FBI try to catch a child predator. REvil returns. State-sponsored hacking, DARPA bug bounties, and the F word. All this, and I did drive through the plague zone yesterday, so stay tuned for the Security Weekly News wrap-up.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. As technology continues to evolve and expand, so have the countless ways our critical systems can be put in jeopardy. Ransomware attacks, misconfiguration, user error, and malicious threat actors, to name a few. As IT infrastructures continue to grow and diversify, how do you ensure stable security? Core Security, a HelpSystems company, provides an analytics-driven, layered approach to security with a portfolio that enables both proactive and reactive responses. With Core Security, you can reduce risk by limiting access, detect upcoming and active threats, test for security weaknesses, and efficiently monitor data for actionable insights. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/core security. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM.
Hello, world. I'm Doug White from Roger Williams University, your host on Security Weekly News wrap-up this week. First, let's wrap up all the show topics for the week. And don't forget to subscribe to the Security Weekly Discord server so you can chat with the host, guests, and everyone else that's now on the Discord server during the live shows or whenever you want to chat. People are on there all the time, and a lot of us are on there sort of lurking and or talking. It's free, and there's a link in the wiki so you can check it out. On Application Security Weekly number 110, Mike, Matt, and John had an interview with Philip Maddox, a senior tech account manager at Signal Sciences. And that segment was about how vastly different AppSec will look in 5 years. I like that. I thought it was a very interesting segment. I think it's something we all ought to be thinking about going forward, because AppSec is something we all need to be aware of and keep monitoring, and it changes so much and so fast that it's definitely something you need to be keeping up with. On Business Security Weekly, number 176, Paul, Jason, and Matt had an interview with Mark French, the CISO and Managing Director at Product Security Group Incorporated. The interview covered Mark's, and this is really cool, Mark's open source career ladder, which he built and put on GitHub so you can use it. This thing will help guide you on your InfoSec job journey. I know I'm going to download. I haven't downloaded it yet, but I'm going to download it because I want to take a look at that and see what it says about my career. Probably it'll be like, you know, this kind of thing. But it's a really exciting topic, and I think as you see this industry start to, you know, reach sort of, I don't know, adolescence, it's time to start thinking about planning your career, and a lot of people ask me questions about that. So one of the questions they talked about was, do you even want to be a CISO? So, or would anyone even have you as a CISO? Like you know who you are. All right. On Enterprise Security Weekly number 187, John, Matt, and Paul had an interview with Scott Cuffer. He's the co-founder and COO at Nucleus Security. This interview was about problems teams face in doing the process of vulnerability management effectively, and how Nucleus is uniquely positioned in that marketplace to help you solve those kind of problems. A second interview with Heather Adkins, who's the Senior Director of Information Security and Privacy at Google, was also on that show. This interview was about a new book which details the best practices for designing scalable and reliable systems that are fundamentally secure. Another big AppSec issue that I think all of us are going to be facing in the next few years as people start asking us more and more to get involved in that development process and the development life cycle, something that we've been saying we want for years and years and years, but all of a sudden it's going to start happening more and more, so we need to be ready for it. On the Security Weekly News, number 41, Matt Allen joined me. Matt is a senior solutions engineer from Viavi Solutions, and he and I had a fun talk about collection of data. When you're trying to monitor your networks, how much data should you collect, what kind of form should it be in, and how should you analyze it? So it was an interesting, these are shorter segments, but there's lots of fun to hear from Matt, and he's a great guy. On Security and Compliance Weekly number 31, Jeff, Matt, Josh, and Scott talked with Chris Patterson, the Executive Director of RSA Risk Transformation Office at RSA Security, and Robert Carey, who's the Vice President of RSA Public Sector Solutions, also at RSA, about what new compliance and security challenges for the public and private sectors need to be looking at in order to manage manage your offices, and as the economy begins to reopen, how is that going to affect you, and what should you be looking at from RSA? So, very timely topic for some very relevant people in that sector. On Paul's Security Weekly, episode 655 last night. First up was an interview with Dan DeClose, the president and CEO of PlexTrack. The topic of this was how organizations can improve their vulnerability management lifecycle. And they demoed some quick ways you could get started with vulnerability management and combining pen test results and putting all that stuff together, things that we're all sort of being challenged by as we go forward. All of us are getting pen test results and or doing pen tests of ours, what we support. And, how does vulnerability management come into that, and how do you keep up? I could literally do a news show every day just reporting new vulnerabilities that are out there, so we all know that there's a lot of challenge with that. How do you mix and match that into your network? They had a news segment after that, and then in a recorded interview, Benjamin Daniel Moussier, the senior security researcher at Acunetics, Acunetics, sorry, I said it wrong. Yeah, Acunetics was the guest, and they talked about web applications evolution from what I sort of grew up with, which was static HTML pages, and how those have turned into full-fledged applications. We certainly see more and more now in the world that your web presence is not just that static HTML. It's really more of a browser that is available to everyone that has something running inside of it, and that has a huge impact on the server side, on the user side. And so there's a lot of issues there. So a great conversation around that. And of course, Security Weekly is always fun. Sorry I couldn't be there. I did not get to attend the show either virtually and or on the show last night because I was experiencing Mad Max Fury Road in real life. I actually had to drive from Baltimore, Maryland to Providence, Rhode Island yesterday afternoon because I had to go get my daughter's things from school. And it was quite interesting to drive on those roads when there's almost no traffic and everything is closed. So it was definitely sort of Mad Max kind of experience. Although we never did get around to the somebody hanging out the back window with a shotgun trying. Yeah, that didn't happen. So it wasn't that much fun. But I did drive in the pandemic through the middle of the plague zone, so it was quite interesting thing. And I did get to drive across the upper deck of the George Washington Bridge for the first time in years and years and years, and everything did close at 6 p.m. There is a Burger King that's open in Old Saybrook, so if you're really desperate out there, you can stop at that Burger King in Old Saybrook. And yeah, they didn't pay me to say that. But if you are planning to drive, you plan carefully, especially if you have children or pets, because a lot of stuff is closed, and or you may want to carry some, everything's kind of sticky. My favorite threat of the week going forward is state-sponsored hacking. It was a big week in the news with that. There was a lot of discussion around everything from Austria's largest ISP, I'll cover that story in a minute, getting attacked by Chinese hackers, to Facebook deciding to label certain state agencies as state-controlled. So they started putting labels on news sources on Facebook. There were political attack ads being generated in India. There were bots posing as potential voters. all this stuff is starting to shape up into something kind of new. Hacking used to be a fun game, right? Before they let all the serious players in who are trying to make money, overthrow governments, all that kind of stuff. So back in my day, we were just pretty happy to get root and change the professor's login to Dr. Stupid. But now we actually have, real serious things going on in the security world, whether it's military, commercial, government entities. They're all getting involved. They have huge resources. They're hiring hackers. They're training hackers. They're doing all sorts of stuff. So there's a lot of change there in terms of what that means for us and your security posture. Because if you are now defending not against some 14-year-old kid in Poughkeepsie, New York, but you're actually trying to defend your enterprise against, say, the People's Republic of China, the response you're going to have is going to start rising quite a bit as this digital Cold War continues to occur. And this war is occurring below the threshold of most of the population. So most people are not seeing this, and they don't understand it when they do see it, which means it's even more challenging because you're having to sell both sides of it. You're not just having to say, we need money to defend ourselves. You're having to say, there is actually a threat. And that's a pretty big challenge. So I'm presuming that eventually we're going to have treaties and all this kind of stuff, just like we did with the nuclear Cold War. And now all the top stories for the week. A1 Telecom in Austria was broken into, and hackers had unrestricted access to their database, which is a fairly large telco in Austria. The hackers had access into the database for almost 6 months. A1 is one of the largest ISPs in Austria, and Christian Haschek, who is a blogger and security researcher in Austria, reported this attack. And he reported initially that it had been covered up by A1, so they sort of didn't say anything about it. But then he reported on it, and the company they immediately said, yeah, there was something. It was a malware infection. It started in November of 2019. It then became clear that the group behind this was Gallium. And Gallium, if you aren't familiar with that hacking group, is at least this is the theory, and they've been around a while, is that this is a Chinese People's Liberation Army-sponsored hacking group was involved and behind this break-in in Austria. Facebook is now, and as I said earlier, labeling media outlets that Facebook, and how that's determined. They have decided they have an algorithm and a set of guidelines that they will use to determine if something is state-controlled. They didn't give a lot of details on exactly what that means, but they do use various factors this is what they said, to determine that they base this on the amount of influence and or ownership that a government has over a news service. And again, there wasn't a lot of detail on how they define all this. Ads from all these sources will also be labeled later this year. So they're not doing the ads yet. So Xinhua, which is the Chinese news agency. So that's the People's Republic of China official state news agency, which, I don't think anybody didn't know that. Maybe some people don't, but Xinhua has been, a Chinese news agency for a long time. And Sputnik, which is sort of the modern equivalent of Pravda. And so Sputnik is a Russian news agency. Both already have labels at this point among some others out in the world. Facebook said that United States-based news sources would not be subject to these labels. So there's another sort of controversial statement from Facebook that U.S. news sources wouldn't be this because they have editorial freedom. So, how that works, we don't know. In another Facebook story for the week, Facebook hired a firm. So they hired a third party to develop a zero-day to take down a persistent threat in the form of hacker Buster Hernandez, who is from California. So Mr. Hernandez, who is known as Brian Kill, has been around for a long time. I guess his MO is he extorts, harasses, and threatens young girls on all sorts of different platforms into getting nude photos of them, that he then uses to exploit them further. He does apparently, this was all the stuff that was documented in the article if you want to read it, all these really awful things that he says to them to coerce them into doing things for him. And they've been trying to stop him for years, but apparently he's quite agile at moving platforms and moving identities so that they can't track him down. So according to the article, Facebook worked for the first time. So they said this was the first time they are ever going to actually officially acknowledge that they have cooperated with the FBI, and they were assisting the FBI in hacking Hernandez. So they actually went after him from a hacking perspective rather than a regular, more physical operation, because he is using Tails. And if you, I mean, you probably know, but if you don't know and you're listening, Tails is an operating system that uses Tor as a browser. So it's an anonymizing operating system. It's running an anonymizing browser, Tor, and basically that, theoretically anyway, hides you from detection. So it's very difficult to trace someone down who's using all these things, as we all know. So Facebook always investigates criminal activity on their platform, according to Facebook. But they said that this was so heinous, that was their word, they were backed into a corner, also their word, and had to find a way to put an end to Mr. Hernandez's harassment and exploitation of these young women. They did not apparently give the zero-day exploit that was developed to the FBI, nor reveal exactly what it was, but they in the article, but they apparently cooperated with the FBI to help get this guy, I presume he's been arrested. It didn't really say. REvil has returned, or REvil's been around. I don't think they've returned. They pretty much existed. REvil is one of the largest ransomware groups and very vocal and out in the public a lot lately. They opened a dark web auction site. So they actually added to their dark website an auction capability, you know, a la eBay or something like that. This ransomware group is really expanding their operations, and now they want to include the ability for people to bid on data that they reportedly have and want to make available to the highest bidder. So this is all part of the modern ransomware strategy, where we try to scare you and threaten you into paying up before your data gets doxed out onto the web. So now they're going to sell data, I guess, from people who don't pay up to the highest bidder. The initial thing they were offering was some accounting data from a big hack. They have been fairly controversial about the quality of their data that they've had available. They apparently had some data supposedly about the U.S. President Donald Trump recently that turned out to not be that dramatic. But it does seem to be a further move into almost commercial business by ransomware groups, you know, as you see these frameworks available for sale and so forth. DARPA, and I'm sure most of us know what DARPA is, but DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency of fame and fortune from long ago. They have turned, they're taking Pentagon-developed products, and they're turning them over to what they called elite white hat hackers. I don't know how that gets defined. My invitation must have got held up in the mail or something. But they were offering up to $25,000 bug bounties for breaking these systems that they're making available on the internet. They are not turning over the actual hardware or the chips that they're wanting to test, but they are allowing hackers to try to break into systems hosted in cloud computing networks. And the targets included voter registration type databases and medical records of COVID-19. I don't think these are obviously real, maybe, I don't know, maybe this real data. I can't believe they would make that available. So it's probably, contrived data, but they're trying to get people to test it. So it's really good. I was really pleased to see this. It's great to see the government sort of backing off of the we know all, we see all, we never make mistakes kind of model that they've used for a long, long time. Everything's a secret, and saying, bug bounties work. There's a lot of smart people out there who want to pursue bug bounties. Why not let them find the holes in this? Because they're going to do it anyway. So if you wait, they'll find the bugs later when you don't, you're not expecting it. So it's great to see critical infrastructure in advance getting tested and improved. A Nintendo Switch hack that had been disclosed in April reported that 160,000 Nintendo Switch accounts had been hacked and logged into without authorization. But yesterday they admitted that it was probably closer to 300,000 accounts that had been compromised. And Nintendo came out and strongly encouraged users to enable two-factor authentication on their Nintendo Switch system to try and prevent this sort of compromise in the future. So these gaming platforms are, notorious for being targeted. And certainly, password or credential stuffing and password spraying attacks work on those as well. For those of you who missed the Layer 8 OSINT conference, which was held virtually last Saturday, they have indicated they will post the talks that were allowing recording as soon as possible on their site, which I include in the wiki. So if you do want to check it out, you can. They have not posted any yet, but they may post them anytime. So there were some great talks. We were all participating in various talks and on the Discord server version of that. And finally, researchers have been studying this for years, and that does include an entire Mythbusters segment, number 142, which was devoted to this, and it's really a good one. So if you like Mythbusters, this was a good one to watch. But apparently, swearing does indeed help reduce pain. This is what the Mythbusters were testing, was that if you were in pain and you used a lot of swear words, it seemed to reduce the level of pain, and people could keep their hand in that ice water. In 2009, I guess one of the original studies was a study of the hypoalgesic effect of swearing, and they illustrated in a scientific study that pain might actually be reduced by swearing. Well, this latest study showed that constantly screaming the F word, I was mixed about whether I was going to say it. I'll just say F word. We'll keep it, make it a family show. It may actually increase your pain threshold, so your ability to actually take pain. The test was another one of the tests, like the Mythbusters did, basically by having people stick their hands in a bucket of ice water, which doesn't sound painful until you actually try it. If you've never stuck your hand in a bucket of ice water, I would suggest you don't, because I saw that Mythbusters and I was like, does that really hurt? Tried it. Yeah, it really, really hurts a lot. So the Mythbusters tested it, and the Mythbusters found the same truth, which was that people that were using real swears actually came out ahead on this. People who were shouting fake swears, Mythbusters had a whole list of words you could yell. I guess this new study used stuff like twizz pipe, which I would probably laugh if I was saying something like that. But the placebo words had no effect, while people that were screaming the F word seemed to have an increase in their threshold for pain. I personally say the F word so often that I should probably be able to gnaw through my own arm with a smile on my face at this point. And that's the news wrap-up for the week of 7 June 2020 in the time of plague. I'm Doug White from the already online cybersecurity program at Roger Williams University. We'll see you next week on the network that never sleeps, Security Weekly. Read the science and stay safe.